We must deport people who are not refugees, who come to Britain illegally. That is only fair.
The rest have come in as dependents, and it's making everybody in this country poorer, and nobody has the courage to stand up and say it. But a reform government will stop this massive population increase in this country, will get British people back to work, and anybody that arrives via a dinghy on the English Channel will never, ever, ever be allowed to stay in our country.
In a significant policy announcement that has sent ripples through Britain's political landscape, Nigel Farage, the prominent leader of Reform UK, yesterday outlined his vision for what he termed a comprehensive solution to illegal immigration.
But Nigel, they're coming in to do jobs. Do you know of the last 3 million that came into Britain from outside of Europe during the Conservatives' period in office, only 22% are working. The rest have come in as dependents, and it's making everybody in this country poorer, and anybody that arrives via a dinghy on the English Channel will never, ever, ever be allowed to stay in our country.
Speaking to a packed audience at the Reform UK meeting, Farage reiterated his long-standing position on immigration enforcement, calling for mass deportation of individuals who have entered the United Kingdom through irregular channels.
Tens of thousands of undocumented young males crossing the English Channel are not refugees in any classic sense of the word, and my fear is, since the time of the last Labour government, the European Court has become more activist. We must deport people who are not refugees, who come to Britain illegally. That is only fair.
This declaration represents the culmination of a political stance that has defined Farage's career since his emergence on the British political scene, and one that continues to resonate with a significant portion of the electorate concerned about border security and national sovereignty. The announcement comes amid ongoing national debate about the UK's asylum system, which Reform UK and its supporters characterise as overwhelmed and subject to abuse.
Unbelievable. 1 in 30 people walking on the street out there has come in the last 2 years alone. The answer is we have to have net migration at zero. It means skilled workers can come, we can go work abroad, we have to have a freeze on the total numbers of those coming in.
Farage's address highlighted what he perceives as systematic failures in immigration control that have allowed thousands to remain in Britain despite entering through unauthorised means. His proposed solution, swift and comprehensive deportation, has drawn both fervent support and intense criticism, reflecting the deeply divided perspectives on immigration that have characterised British politics for more than a decade. The Reform UK meeting served as a platform for Farage to reaffirm his unwavering position on illegal immigration, a stance that has remained consistent throughout his political career spanning his leadership of UKIP, the Brexit Party, and now Reform UK. For his supporters, this consistency represents principled leadership on an issue they believe has been mishandled by successive governments. Many attendees at yesterday's gathering expressed their belief that Farage's approach offers the only viable solution to what they perceive as an immigration crisis threatening British identity and resources. The political context surrounding Farage's announcement cannot be overlooked. Experiencing significant volatility, Farage's hardline immigration stance serves both as a rallying point for his base and as a means of distinguishing his party from the Conservative and Labour alternatives. The timing of the announcement also coincides with heightened public concern about small boat crossings in the English Channel, which have become a powerful symbol in the immigration debate, despite representing only a portion of overall migration to the UK. Farage's approach to immigration has always been characterised by directness and an absence of the diplomatic language often employed by mainstream politicians when discussing sensitive issues.
And I said, and I was putting it out on YouTube in those days, I said 2 things. I said, number 1, you may as well put a sign on the White Cliffs of Dover saying everyone welcome, because we'd stop deporting illegal immigrants. Do you know, in the last year of the Labour government, 2009-10, we deported 45,000 people. That is what we used to do. We used to say, if you want to come and live here, You do it legally. You want to come here illegally, we get rid of you, because that makes sense, doesn't it, to everybody? To everybody. But I also said...
Yesterday's speech continued this tradition, with Farage framing illegal immigration not merely as a policy challenge, but as an existential threat to British sovereignty and security. This framing has proven effective in mobilising supporters who feel that conventional political discourse has failed to address their concerns about the pace and nature of demographic change in Britain. The concept of illegal immigration itself remains contested terrain in British political discourse. Refugee advocates and human rights organisations consistently point out that seeking asylum is a legal right under international conventions to which the UK is a signatory.
There were two big problems. One, mainstream media were not covering this story. The newspapers weren't covering it, the radio stations weren't covering it, the TV companies weren't covering it. And I think my actions, my repeated actions, embarrassed them, frankly, into going out and covering the story. But I also said, and I predicted, that this would become, and then I used a very naughty word, unforgivable word. A word for which I'll never be forgiven. I said, this will lead to an invasion. Well, I mean, you would have thought, I'd advocated killing the firstborn, But 4,000 boats and 127,000 people later, I think I was right to use the word invasion, because that is what it is.
Many individuals who would fall under Farage's proposed deportation policy are technically asylum seekers, awaiting determination of their claims, a nuance often absent from Reform UK's rhetoric on the issue. This tension between international refugee obligations and domestic immigration concerns forms a central fault line in the ongoing national conversation. Farage's supporters view his position through the lens of national security and preservation of British cultural identity. At yesterday's meeting, attendees frequently referenced concerns about integration, social cohesion, and the strain on public services they attribute to irregular migration. These perspectives reflect genuine anxieties among segments of the British public, who feel that rapid demographic change has occurred without their consent.
Maybe what we should be doing is declaring this a national security emergency.